Welcome to Leveraging REDCap to Maintain Standardization and Quality Assurance of Data across a statewide quality improvement initiative. I'm going to do three things in the next 20 minutes. Very briefly, I'll describe our project, the Early Autism Evaluation Hub Network. I'll review the evolution of our REDCap database utilized for quality improvement, not research, although I do research as well, and a statewide primary care learning collaborative across 12 different healthcare systems. Imagine that, people playing nicely in the sandbox together. And then finally, I'll explain just a few quality assurance methods, some successes and challenges in the standardization across our statewide quality improvement project. So again, very briefly, I just want to give you some context about the work that we do at the IU School of Medicine. Our project is mainly involved with reducing time from autism concern to diagnosis to enrollment in those really important interventions for young kids with autism. So it's threefold. We have a three-tiered approach. First, we want primary care doctors around the state to do developmental surveillance and screening at all well-child visits, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics. And then those children that are at risk or may have increased likelihood for autism, we want them to be seen for further medical evaluation. And one of the places you can do that is in our Early Autism Evaluation hubs. These are for children ages 14 to 47 months of age. And again, they have some increased risk or likelihood for autism. In about 20%, last year it was 17% of the cases, some of the kids can't be diagnosed in these hubs, in the local primary care hubs, and they need to be referred to a place like Riley for a specialty referral. Again, these are more complex cases. You can see our sites around the state. Those are those red stars. Since 2012, we've had 42 clinicians trained by our IU School of Medicine faculty to implement an actual early autism evaluation hub within their primary care practice. Currently, we have 22 clinicians that are doing this work in 17 practices, again, across 12 health systems. We have 2 monthly learning collaborative calls. We do those over the lunch hour. These are busy doctors. So we start at 12:10 and we finish at 12:50. And we also have one annual meeting that we'll do in September, which has a longer, maybe a 5-hour set of curriculum. And then we also offer the American Board of Pediatrics Maintenance of Certification, Part 4 credit, which the pediatricians do require every 3 to 5 years, I believe, for their licensure. To date, we've seen over 5,000 young kids in our hubs evaluated for autism. About 60% that are seen in the hubs get that autism diagnosis. Other children receive the developmental delay diagnosis, and about 20% are receiving other diagnoses like speech delay or anxiety or other diagnoses. And you're probably wondering, when is she going to start talking about REDCap? She only has 20 minutes. So the data that we collect at these hubs obviously goes into REDCap on a monthly basis by our individual hubs. So a little QI background. Remember, we're not talking about research right now. This is the model by the ARC, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. This is their model. And if you kind of look at the top right there in the blue, where the practice arrow is, and look at my first 3 bullets there, why do we collect data? Why are we doing this? Well, we want to assess adherence to best practices by measuring key quality improvement indicators. Looks like my RS got cut off by my image. We take those indicators, that's the data that we're collecting in REDCap every month, and we do some analysis, we look at the data, we might do some tweaking, and then we take that information back to the individual clinicians, the individual hubs, our system as a whole. We give them some feedback, right, based on these quality indicators. Usually it's pretty good. These are smart doctors, but sometimes we need to do some tweaking, right? We want a standard method at all our 17 sites across our state. So we might have some recommendations, how we can tweak some things. Maybe it's just a data entry issue, but that final step is the feedback or evidence. We want to inform the practice process and improve system processes and care for not just the patients, but for the teams that are working in these hubs. And finally, I would say a good reason to collect data is to disseminate information to your partners, your collaborators, certainly your funders want to hear how you're doing. And I would say potential funders, right? When those proposals come across our desk, we want to be able to have current data collected for those. Why is it important to standardize your measures? We want accurate data entry. When I say standardize, we want good, clear definitions in those fields in REDCap. You really need to think about that and get feedback from your team and outsiders. Do these measures make sense? Is this really what you want to collect? We also want to have efficient data entry. We want to make it easy and efficient for our data entry personnel to enter data in REDCap. So you need to think on the front end how you're developing your collection instrument. And of course, I've been talking about standardization. Having standard measures is going to have a nice standard program across all of our hub sites. We want what's happening in, as I was showing you up here, the north part of our state in South Bend. We want that family to receive a similar evaluation to a family in Evansville or New Albany. So let's talk about REDCap features. This may seem very obvious and simple, but I really want you to think when you're creating a new data collection instrument, how to make these measures clear and understandable to obviously the data entry person, but to your team. And these are some tips, things you can think about when you're creating your tools for greater accuracy of data entry and efficiency of data entry. So let's talk about drop-down boxes. This is a great example. So in this field, this is where we collect our referring primary care provider, the doctor who's referring to our autism evaluation site. There are 1,500 doctors in this drop-down box. And what used to happen is, and maybe you guys have some tips how to do this better, but what was happening is we had the same doctor in there more than once. We had people spelling the doctor, Dr. Jones or Dr. Patel or first name, last name, and we're realizing when in our analysis, this is the same physician. So we created a format where we have last name first, we spelled the names correctly, through training and reminders, please use our drop downs. There is an other selection, of course, because there are new doctors every day entering our state, but we encourage them to use the list, and when they enter the new doctor, last name first. And then I'll add that to my drop down list so they have it next time when they enter that same referring physician. Date validation. Validation is a great feature in REDCap for all your text box fields. Use it. That's going to prevent errors in your data entry, more errors. So I like to use, month, date, year. I do a calculation for wait time. That's one of our really important quality indicators. And so I need to have those dates in the same format. And I do a calculation. I'm not going to make my data entry person enter wait time. I'm going to make it easy for them. Give me the referral date, give me the visit date, and then I'll do a calculation on the back end or front end so that I know that important measure, wait time. We want to reduce wait times for the kids and their families. Calculation, same idea. This measure involves age of the child and this complex cutoff table for the tool they use in the evaluation called the STAT, the screening tool for autism in toddlers. Again, they don't need to enter whether or not the child was at risk. They know they put in the birth date, they've put in the score. My calculation is going to pop this result out in REDCap. Looking at my time. Okay, ongoing refinement of measures. So you've done this great job. You've created a beautiful data collection instrument with awesome definitions. You think they're very clear. And then you go do some training with a new data entry person, and they're asking you lots of questions. What do you really want here? What does this mean? So we're constantly, not constantly, but we do tweak measures after they've been in production. We do this based on feedback from our participants for better clarity and standardization. But you need to track these edits. We've got a database now that's 10 years old. And so typically our analysis is 1 month or 6 month period. Often every year we're doing an annual report, but I want to know when I change race, ethnicity. When did I change those categories? When did I add this measure? When did I change the definition? There's one thing to edit or tweak a definition, but if you're really changing the meaning, I like to hide that old field, right? And then create a new field. So skipping around here, but the way I like to track my edits, and I'd love some tips from you, I use my code book, of course. That's all the definitions in the project. Obviously, the data dictionary is going to give me a current snapshot of my project, but I like to download the data dictionary beginning of the year or beginning of a project, and then I can even make notes in separate sheets or to the far right of this download of the data dictionary, when I made an edit, why we made the edit, because at the end of the year, I want to go back and go, whoa, when did we change race, ethnicity? If you don't want to do the Excel, I'm an Excel person. If you don't want to do that, of course, logging. Logging will have a good record of when you made your changes to your fields, your definitions. I think I've alluded to the hidden choice there. So, you can, if you don't want to use a field, you don't want to lose data, you don't want to delete the field, you can hide that in action tags by typing @hidden. You can also hide choices. I like this when for example, race, ethnicity, we often are changing those categories. I can hide an old choice, add a new one. You can see in my example there, We had a Fort Wayne visit at one time that's no longer applicable, so we wanted to hide that choice. Just again, hopefully improving data efficiency. That data entry person doesn't have that option to choose number 3. So you can do at hide choice equals quote 3 unquote there to hide that choice. Accuracy of data entry is essential. And one of the ways we do this, it might seem obvious, but you need to train your data entry personnel. It's not enough to just give them the tool and say, guess what, guess on these measures. And most of them are intuitive. You know, we're getting a lot of the data from the electronic medical record, but you want to train your data entry personnel. I do it in about 20 or 30 minutes. I have a PowerPoint that has all the current definitions of our tool. That PowerPoint is changing when I change measures. When I get questions, I create frequently facts or frequently asked question sheets. And I remind the new user, please enter the data this way, or this is where you find this data point. We give them guidance on where in the EMR they might find referral date or where they might find demographics. Timely data entry, very important. We want them to turn in the data for their visits within 1 month of the visit. Most of our hubs are compliant. Some have more patients and it takes them a little longer. These are busy doctors' offices, but we try to do a reminder email if they're a little behind, and they know that's coming and they welcome it. And they might say, Angela, it was cold season. We didn't get our data entered, or they didn't have visits. There might be several reasons why there wasn't data, but that reminder email may seem obvious, but I do it about every quarter. I'm doing these emails with not just reminders, but like changes in our measures. And of course, we obviously encourage feedback to the new user and to our current users on our monthly calls. Data cleaning is also essential. So it's not just having this beautiful REDCap database. Guess what? Some of the data might not be accurate or missing. So I like to go in occasionally and look for outliers, things that might look strange. I remember seeing the year 1422. This child's 3 years old. There's no way they were referred in 1422. It probably was 2022, but just check in if you can. Again, they're busy, but do an email and say, hey, can you check record, blah, blah, blah. Did you really mean the date to be this? And so that can really keep your data clean, right? Now, maybe you're doing your analysis in SPSS or Excel. It's one thing to change it there in your analysis, but you got to go back to the original REDCap record, right? And I wasn't always good about this when I was a new data person, but you need to go back to the original record, right? Because you're going to do future analysis, different analyses, right? So go back to the original place where that data point was. You might all have that special power to rename and edit and delete records. It's scary, right? But there's a reason why you're able to edit records. You go in, make sure you have the correct record, the correct field, take your time, make the change. And I put a little note. I talked to the hub on this date. The reason I'm changing this is because it wasn't 1422, it was 2022. And there's some log, right, of what happened there. So don't be changing everybody's data, but when there's reason to do it, change it in the original place, change it in REDCap, not just your current analysis. To further ensure quality assurance, we have those monthly meetings, the calls that occur during the lunch hour. So we share a quarterly data summary. It's very brief. It's not like our annual report. And we have discussions about new measures or clarifying measures, or, hey, we had a new data entry person say this. Is this how you guys are doing this? Kind of checking in with everyone to make sure we're on the same page. And then this is also where we do our quality improvement projects. Is anyone familiar with the ABP, the American Board of Pediatrics Maintenance of Certification, Part 4? So we do these quality improvement projects that the doctors need for their licensure. And so at that time, we do some intervention work, some more data collection, and they can get 25 points of credit, which they all need. So 2 more things I want to talk about are successes and our challenges. Certainly timely data entry. I used to do an annual report in August for the previous year. It just, when the data came in, we have one hub that's very large and they just couldn't get their data entered till May. And so now I'm getting this annual report out in August. It was unacceptable, right? So this past year, we lots of reminders in December. And I think the last bit of data for 23 was in like the 4th week of January, like right before the end of the month. And so I got a report out in February, an annual report to our partners, funder. They want to know how we're doing, right? Again, quality improvement, a little different than a grant or a research grant, but this was a big plus for us. And we're doing quality improvement work. So we have to have the data in a timely fashion, right? We can't be looking at data that's 6 months old. So we really encourage our busy clinicians and their teams to do this. We were having trouble getting demographic data, so we changed our intake form. That would be the form that the families fill out, but that data ends up in the EMR. So that helped us get better demographic data in our REDCap tool. And then I think I've mentioned the regular data entry personnel email that I send probably quarterly with just little reminders, updates. I always thank them. We celebrate our successes, and that goes out quarterly. And that's helped with, I think, less missing data and hopefully more accurate data. Then we've had some challenges. Who loves the other choice? Who would like to not have other choices when you're doing your analysis? And so we remind them not to use that. Look in my dropdown. Is a choice there in my list somewhere that you could use? If it really isn't, then yes, please fill in an other. But you know how that makes analysis. We have one diagnosis field, and they were putting in all sorts of things for speech delay. And these are real, these are actual diagnoses, right? Like mixed receptive expressive language disorder. But we wanted them to put that in speech delay for the purposes of our QI project. So I had to clean about 22 records of 1,000 records back in January. And so now we've given them some notes. Could you just please put this in speech delay? So maybe that'll make my analysis a little cleaner here next year. Missing data is a problem. I'll do that sometimes. I'll email people and say, is this data really missing? And often it is. But that's unfortunate. We just don't have the data in the EMR for them to enter it. And then unfortunately, we have clinicians doing data entry. And these are busy clinicians, right? Busy pediatricians. So we really encourage them to identify someone in their practice that I could train, like an RN or an MA, to do the data entry. And I think still we have about 25% of our hubs have the doctors still entering data. So that's a challenge, and we'd like it to be people working to the top of their license if that happens. So in conclusion, using REDCap for the EAE, the Early Autism Evaluation statewide network data collection, improves accuracy, efficiency, and clarity of data entry. It also helps someone like myself with data management. By analyzing quality improvement data collected in REDCap, standardization to our model can be maximized, opportunities for process and care improvement can be realized, and obviously information can be disseminated to our partners, our collaborators, and certainly our funders. And I would say potential funders and also anybody else that wants to learn about our work. Let's see, any questions? I got a couple minutes, it looks like. Any questions and any input about ideas, how they do use REDCap for data management? Jillian? Oh yeah, what I do is I turn on this. Okay, then you should be able to be heard.
Okay.
Can you hear?
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. One of the challenges that you mentioned is missing data. I was curious if you ever make use of the bubble where you can mark data as missing so you don't have to follow up.
No, we don't encourage that.
I don't use it very often, but I could think that.
Am I supposed to repeat the question?
Yeah, go ahead and repeat it, and then when you answer.
Okay, so and you which one now?
So you can
So you the ceiling mic?
Yeah, okay, you answer.